Sanders pulled his battered Ford F-150 into the dirt driveway of his house, just outside of Buchanan, West Virginia. He was grinning ear to ear. The sun was starting to dip low behind the thick forest that surrounded their little property, casting shadows across the gravel. In the bed of his truck, panting quietly and calmly, was what Mark had been told was an oversized German Shepherd. It had been a birthday gift for his son, Nathan, who had been going through the kind of rough patch no kid should have to face. Nathan was 12, shy, awkward, and a little too soft-hearted for the world he was stuck in. School had been brutal. Day after day, he came home with new bruises, new stories about the same pack of boys who made it their mission to remind him that he was different. No friends, no real happiness, and no break from it all. Mark had watched his boy retreat deeper into himself as the months passed, his smile fading, his energy draining. It was heartbreaking for a grown man to watch his own son hurt. Something had to give, so Mark decided that maybe, just maybe, a dog could be the bridge back to a little bit of light in his son's life. The place he had bought the animal from was a little sketchy, he could admit that now. A dusty roadside farm several counties over, way out past Bellington, run by a man whose eyes never quite looked straight at you. They looked to the side, darting back and forth. The old guy had called it a special breed and said it was loyal, like no other, protective too. Mark had chalked it up to backwoods talk and handed over the cash without much more thought. Nathan was already outside by the time Mark killed the engine. The boy's eyes lit up immediately, and for the first time in months, Mark saw a real smile break across his son's face, a wide, giddy, pure smile. "You got me a dog?" Nathan gasped, running over to the truck bed. Mark chuckled, ruffling the kid's hair. "Happy birthday, buddy. He's all yours." Nathan scrambled into the truck bed without hesitation, throwing his arms around the huge animal's thick neck. The creature, which looked a little too bulky for a regular German Shepherd and had a strange, almost human-like glint in its yellow eyes, responded by licking Nathan's face with a long, rough tongue. "I'm gonna name him Shadow," Nathan declared. Mark just smiled and nodded, not having the heart to mention that there was something different about the animal. A little too upright in the way it moved, a little too intelligent in the way it studied everything around it. But if Nathan was happy, that was all that mattered. Plus, he's seen Belgian Malinois act similar by the way they studied situations and thought everything through. From that day on, Nathan and Shadow were inseparable. They walked the property together, played in the woods, sat on the front porch in the evenings, watching the fireflies dance in the humid air. Nathan started to laugh again, started to talk more, started to look forward to things. Mark thought maybe he had actually managed to fix something for once. But over time, Mark noticed small things, things that tugged at the back of his mind when he tried to sleep. Like how Shadow never barked, not once, or how sometimes, out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw the dog standing on two legs, only to blink and find him back on all fours. Or how every now and then, when Shadow thought nobody was looking, his mouth would curl back into something that was a little too much like a smile and a little too much like a snarl. Nathan, of course, noticed none of it. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. Shadow was his best friend, the only real friend he had ever had. Whatever Shadow was, it didn't matter to him. He even did a cute school project about Shadow and got an A+ score. That made his father super proud. One afternoon, a few months after Shadow had come into their lives, Nathan was walking home from school. He hated that walk. The school was small, the roads winding and lonely, lined with thick woods on either side. Their house was about 1.5 miles down one of the more isolated back roads. No sidewalks, no streetlights, just dirt, gravel, and trees. And on that day, just like so many others, Nathan wasn't walking home alone. It started with the usual taunts. Billy Kemp, Travis Hargrove and Cody Allen, the same three kids who had made Nathan's life a living hell. They rode their bikes slow and lazy behind him, shouting insults, tossing pebbles at his back, calling him every name they could think of. Nathan kept his head down and walked faster, clutching the straps of his backpack so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He tried to ignore them, tried to pretend they weren't there, but it was no use. These kids were assholes. "Hey, loser," Billy sneered, riding up alongside him, shoving his shoulder roughly. Nathan stumbled but kept walking. Travis rode up on the other side and kicked dust into Nathan's face. "What's the hurry? Scared your freak dog's gonna miss you." They laughed, a cruel, shrill sound that echoed through the trees. Nathan said nothing. He just kept walking, faster and faster, his heart pounding and anxiety increasing. He was almost to the turnoff, the little dirt road that would lead to the safety of home, almost. But the bullies weren't done. By the time Nathan reached the start of the back road, Billy swung off his bike and grabbed him by the backpack, yanking him backwards so hard he hit the ground with a dull thud. Gravel bit into his palms and elbows. Before he could scramble to his feet, Travis was there, stomping on his legs, laughing. Cody ripped the backpack off his shoulders and flung it into the woods. "You're nothing, you little faggot," Billy hissed, standing over him. "You're never gonna be shit in this life." Billy spat on him, laughing, kicking dust in his face. Nathan closed his eyes against the sting of humiliation and pain, wishing more than anything that he could just disappear. All of a sudden, something from the woods moved. Nathan laid on the ground for a moment, dirt in his mouth, trying to push himself up while the three boys circled him like buzzards. His backpack was long gone into the thick woods, and his body ached from the stomping, but something made him pause. A sound, a feeling. The woods had gone unnaturally still. The breeze that usually stirred the tall grass and creaked the branches had died completely. Even the cicadas, loud and oppressive only a few minutes ago, had fallen silent. The only thing Nathan could hear was his own breathing and the crunch of gravel under the bully's sneakers. Billy grabbed a handful of Nathan's hair, yanking his head up roughly. "Look at me when I'm fucking talking to you, you little freak." Nathan blinked, trying to focus, but his eyes were drawn not to Billy's face, but to the dark tree line behind him. There, deep among the pines, something was moving, slowly, prowling. A figure, large, shifting between the trees just beyond clear sight. Nathan's heart jumped into his throat for a moment, pure instinct screaming at him to run, but then he remembered. He knew that shape. He knew that deliberate, patient pace. Shadow. It was Shadow. Billy sneered, pushing Nathan's head back down into the dirt. Travis laughed and kicked dust into his hair. Maybe we should drag him back to his house, show his stupid dog what a real beating looks like. Nathan stayed still, playing it smart, but inside something was shifting. A small ember deep in his chest, growing hotter, meaner. He could hear it now too, a low growl vibrating through the ground more than the air. Subtle, but real. It was coming from the woods. The bullies heard it too. They all paused, glancing around. "What the hell was that?" Cody said, suddenly not sounding so brave. "Probably just a coyote or something," Billy muttered, but he kept glancing at the woods over his shoulder. Another growl, this one louder. Travis grabbed Billy by the sleeve. "Dude, maybe we should go." Billy yanked his arm free. "Are you kidding me? It's probably just some mutt. Stop being a pussy." Nathan lifted his head slightly and wiped the blood from his mouth. The fear that had gripped him moments ago was fading fast, replaced with something else. Confidence, power. Shadow was here. The boy sat up slowly, surprising the bullies. Travis took an unconscious step back. Cody looked over his shoulder again toward the trees, squinting into the gloom. "I think you should leave," Nathan said quietly, his voice carrying a weight it never had before. Billy blinked at him, stunned for a second, then scowled. "Or what?" Nathan said nothing. He just smiled a little, a smile filled with something that made all three of them shift uneasily. From the woods came another noise, a heavy thud, like something massive had landed just behind the tree line. Branches cracked. The air felt thicker somehow, harder to breathe. "What the hell is that?" Cody hissed. "I don't see anything," Travis said, but his voice was shaking. Billy tried to hold on to his bravado, tried to puff up his chest and sneer, but he was glancing over his shoulder now, almost twitching with every sound. Nathan stood up fully now, brushing dirt off his jeans. His cut stung and his ribs ached, but he stood tall, taller than he had in a long, long time. "You should leave," Nathan repeated, "before he gets tired of waiting." The bullies were properly scared now. You could see it in the way they kept shifting their weight, the way they kept looking everywhere but at Nathan. Fear was a scent in the air, thick and sour. Another heavy step came from the woods, closer this time. They still couldn't see anything, but the feeling of being watched, hunted, was unmistakable. A shadow moved just beyond the tree line. Huge, slower, this time, almost teasing. The creature was letting them know it was there, letting the fear build and build. Cody backed away another step. "Billy, man, I'm serious. We need to go." Billy opened his mouth to respond, but froze. His eyes were locked onto something moving between the trees. Not a dog, not a coyote, something bigger, taller, something wrong. Nathan followed his gaze, and for the first time since the beating started, he felt no fear at all, only certainty. Shadow was here for him. He didn't even have to call out. His friend was already moving. Another step. Now they could hear the breathing too, a heavy, wet huffing sound, low and primal. What is that?" Travis whispered. The last of the fading sunlight caught a glimpse of coarse black fur, massive shoulders, a hunched, prowling figure that moved with grace between the trees. Billy cursed under his breath. "That's not a goddamn dog." Nathan smiled again, a small, knowing smile. "No," he said, voice calm, steady. "He's a lot more than that." The bullies were practically vibrating with fear now, frozen in place between fight and flight, neither option seeming safe. They kept staring into the woods, flinching at every small footstep and branch cracking. Finally, Shadow stepped fully into view. He moved out of the trees and onto the gravel road like something that had crawled straight out of a nightmare. Towering over the boys, easily 6 feet tall, his back arched and powerful, his arms dangling low with thick, clawed hands that brushed the dirt. His muzzle was long and wet with glistening black lips pulled back over razor teeth, and his yellow eyes glowed like lanterns in the deepening twilight. Everyone just watched, like time stopped, everything in slow motion. Nathan just stood there, relaxed, watching. He didn't move, he didn't speak, he didn't need to. Shadow didn't make a sound. They weren't so tough anymore. All that shit talking was gone. Shadow just stared at them, standing fully upright now, his massive chest slowly rising and falling as he sized them up. The 3 boys were frozen in place. Cody was the first to stumble backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. His voice cracked as he pointed. "What the hell is that thing?" Billy said nothing. His mouth hung open, his hands balled into fists, but they were shaking. Shadow's head tilted slowly to the side, that awful black grin curling wider across his face. It was a smile, not a snarl, a twisted, intelligent smile, like he knew what was about to happen and was savoring the fear already dripping from their skin. Then he moved. Fast, inhumanly fast. He covered the space between the trees and the boys in a blur, gravel exploding beneath his clawed feet. The first to scream was Travis. He tried to turn and run, but Shadow was already on him. One swipe, one massive arm swinging low, and Travis was lifted clean off his feet. His body slammed sideways into a tree trunk with a crack that sounded like a branch snapping in a storm. His spine bent in a way it never should have. He didn't get up. Cody broke next, He turned and bolted down the road, screaming and crying for help, but Shadow didn't even need to run to catch him. He just lunged once, covered the distance in seconds, and brought Cody down from behind. Nathan saw it all, the way Shadow grabbed him by the back of the neck with one massive hand, claws digging into his flesh like hooks, and dragged him back across the gravel as if he weighed nothing. Cody's screams cut through the woods, high and sharp and panicked. But they didn't last long. Shadow lifted him again, spun him around, and clamped his jaws down onto Cody's throat like a steel trap. The sound was horrible, wet and crunching, flesh tearing, blood spraying all over the gravel. Cody spasmed once, twice, then went limp. Shadow let the body drop. Billy just stood there, still and silent, eyes wide, face pale, tears and snot running down his face, and piss running down his legs and running shoes. Shadow turned toward him. The boy who had laughed the loudest, hit the hardest, pushed Nathan into the dirt more times than he could count. He stood there staring as the creature stepped over Cody's body and began to stalk toward him, slow, deliberate, savoring the moment. Nathan didn't speak. He didn't scream. He just watched. Shadow paused only once, looked back at Nathan as if asking for permission. Nathan nodded, and that was all it took. Shadow surged forward. Billy tried to run, but Shadow hit him full in the chest, driving him backward until he slammed into the gravel with a shriek. The creature dropped onto him with all its weight, claws pinning Billy's arms to the dirt. "No, please," Billy begged, voice high and cracking. I didn't." Shadow leaned down slowly, that snarling black maw just inches from Billy's face. The stench of blood and wet fur overwhelmed him. Then, without hesitation, Shadow grabbed one of Billy's arms and ripped it from its socket like a chicken drumstick fresh out the oven. The boy screamed so loud, Nathan covered his ears with both hands. Another claw carved across Billy's torso, ripping through his shirt, tearing deep into flesh. Shadow didn't kill him fast. This one was different. He wanted him to feel it. He shredded his stomach open in long, brutal rakes, exposing glistening muscle and pale intestine. Billy thrashed and screamed, sobbing now, choking on his own spit, blood gurgling out of his mouth. One last strike, a heavy downward claw that penetrated Billy's eye sockets and stabbing into his brains with a sickening crunch. After a few twitches, Billy finally stopped moving. The woods were quiet again, only the slow drip of blood hitting leaves, the soft rustle of wind returning to the trees, and the low breathing of Shadow filled the silence. Nathan walked forward calmly. He looked down at the bodies. What was left of Travis crumpled against the tree. Cody sprawled out with his neck chewed through. Billy, barely recognizable now, his face twisted into a permanent mask of agony. Nathan didn't feel sick. He didn't feel scared. He didn't feel anything but peace. Shadow stood beside him, chest still heaving, blood staining the thick fur of his claws and snout. He turned his head and looked down at Nathan. The boy reached out and gently patted his side. "Good boy," he whispered. Shadow let out a deep, contented rumble. They understood each other, and as Nathan turned back toward the dirt road and started walking home, Shadow followed at a slow, steady pace, padding silently behind him like a loyal guardian. When they reached the yard, Shadow veered off into the woods again without a word, disappearing into the trees like he was never there. Nathan walked through the front door of the house, wiped his feet on the mat, and went straight to the fridge to grab a cold Mountain Dew. Mark was watching TV in the living room. He glanced over, saw the dirt and blood on Nathan's shirt, but said nothing at first. Rural life meant scrapes and messes. Nothing out of the ordinary. "You all right?" Mark asked casually, his voice more curious than concerned. Nathan nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." The news broke that evening. 3 local boys found dead on the gravel road that cut through the Buchanan woods. Authorities said it was a bear attack, or maybe a pack of coyotes. The bodies were in bad shape, hard to tell. A vicious animal incident, the anchor called it. Mark watched the screen closely. The camera panned over the scene, flashing lights bouncing off tree trunks, police tape flapping in the breeze. He looked at his son. Nathan was calm, too calm, and for just a moment, Mark thought about that first night, about the shape he'd seen move in the back of the truck, about the way the thing had watched him. His stomach twisted just a little. He knew. He knew what had really happened. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.